Hello, everybody. My name is Lainey Doodles, and I am your humble host for True Crime Character Design. Right now, I am trying to keep up with a theme that is for John Wayne Gacy, which is this episode as of now. It took me a long time to get this look together, and I hope you all like it. Anyway, on to the speed paint portion. See you there! I realize John Wayne Gacy, or Pogo the Clown, has been covered by every true crime channel on YouTube and major streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. I realize killer clowns are a dime a dozen. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Pennywise, early 90s, and 2016 version, doesn't matter. Clown sightings, and finally, Art the Clown from Terrifier. IDGAF about Terrifier. Sorry, not sorry. I'm covering Gacy because I feel like covering him, and even though he is talked about ad nauseum, I've something to say. And I had a character and monster design prior in mind long before I've ever created true crime character design. To make a long, tedious story short, I wanted to make a video game inspired by Cuphead and Bendy and the Ink Machine, specifically 1930s toon aesthetic, but I have zero coding, animation, and programming skills. John/Pogo was going to be a boss fight monster Penelope fights against. My reasoning is that simple. Yes, I realize big-time news outlets, Deadbug, check out his channel if you're interested, and South Park had mentioned Gacy. And like Richard Ramirez, Gacy appears in an episode of American Horror Story Hotel, specifically the Halloween special episode. John Wayne Gacy's actor, John Carroll Lynch, was darkly funny as Gacy. I found the line, "Johnny Depp bought one of my paintings," humorous for some reason. As everybody already knows, Gacy did paintings. They aren't masterpieces by any means, but hey, Johnny Depp bought a painting from Gacy, as mentioned, so that amounts to something. John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the second of 3 kids. His parents were John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Gacy. John Stanley was an auto repair machinist and World War II veteran, whilst Marion was a homemaker. Gacy was of Polish and Danish ancestry. John Stanley was a manly man that was an alcoholic, and I swear I'm seeing a pattern of Fathers of the Year for every true crime subject I cover. He was an abusive bastard that terrorized his family. John Stanley frequently belittled his son, calling him dumb and stupid, and comparing him unfavorably with his sisters. When John Wayne was 4, John Stanley beat him for disarranging a car engine component. Marion tried to protect her 4-year-old son from this attack, which resulted in Daddy Dearest accusing John Wayne of being a sissy and a mama's boy that would probably grow up LGBT. In 1949, John Wayne got his rear end whooped for getting caught fondling a young girl. The same year, a family friend essayed him occasionally. Gacy never told his father anything about the family friend doing that to him, because he would be blamed for this man doing disgusting acts. Despite the challenging relationship John Gacy had with his dad, he loved him. But John Wayne Gacy felt he was never good enough in his father's eyes. Despite the horrific things John Wayne Gacy would do in his future, I do feel bad for him at this point because he just wanted his dad to be proud of him and love him. I sympathize with that. However, his future self is one I don't sympathize with. The child is dead, and John Stanley killed him. Gacy was an overweight and unathletic kid because of a heart condition. He was told to avoid sports. At around 10 years old, he began to experience blackouts. He was hospitalized for these episodes, and in 1957 for a burst appendix. These hospital visits from age 14 to 18 years old, he had spent almost a year in the hospital. He attributed this to his grades slipping. Gacy wasn't conclusively diagnosed, and his dad felt that he was fake being sick, even accusing him of being sick as John laid in the hospital bed. In 1960, at age 18, Gacy became involved in politics, working for an assistant precinct captain for a local Democratic Party candidate. Yet again, Mr. Father of the Year, John Stanley, criticized his son for his political decisions. The same year, Stanley bought Wayne a car. Before you assume Stanley threw his son a bone, there was a catch. He kept the vehicle's title under his name until Gacy could pay for the thing, which took John several years to do so, and the jackass father confiscated the keys when John Wayne didn't do as he was told. Getting tired of this back and forth, John got a copy of the keys, and in response, John Stanley removed the distributor cap, keeping the component for 3 days. Hours after his father replaced the cap, Gacy left home and drove to Las Vegas, Nevada with $136 to his name. He was hoping to live with his cousin to figure out what to do with his life. Gacy worked in the Las Vegas ambulance services before being transferred to Palm Mortuary. He worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing the morticians as they embalmed bodies, and occasionally he served as the pallbearer. He slept on a cot behind the embalming room, and later confessed that one evening, while alone, he clambered into the coffin of a teenage boy and... how do I say this without sounding gross? Well, there's no other way. John was showing this corpse love, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing a sense of shock. After this, Gacy ended up returning home to Chicago. After Gacy came home from his trip in Las Vegas, he enrolled at the Northwestern Business College, despite having failed to complete high school. He graduated in 1963 and took on a management trainee position with the Nunn-Bush Shoe Company. In 1964, the company transferred him to Springfield, Illinois, to work as a salesman and eventually promoted him to the department manager. In March of that year, he became engaged to Marilyn Myers, a coworker. During Gacy and Myers' courtship, Gacy joined the local chapter of the JCs. That same year, John had his second instance with a man. According to Gacy, a colleague gave him a bunch of alcoholic beverages and invited him on his sofa in his home. Gacy received drunken fellatio from said colleague. By 1965, Gacy rose to the position of vice president of the Springfield JCs and was named the third most outstanding JC in Illinois. John and Mary Lynn Gacy traveled to Waterloo, Iowa. They got married, and Marilyn's dad bought 3 KFC restaurants that John could manage, with the understanding they'd move into Marilyn's family home, which was a decent size. Gacy opened up a club where he invites his KFC employees to come over, drink, and play pool. Although Gacy employed teenagers of both sexes, he socialized primarily with males. Gacy tried to approach these guys with sexual advances in mind, but he was rejected, and when he was rejected, he'd excuse the advances as a joke and a test of morals. Sure, okay, John, whatever. Marilyn gave birth to a son in February 1966 and a daughter March of 1967. Gacy described his life during this period as perfect. He had finally earned his father's approval. His dad stated that he was wrong about John and apologized for the abuse John had endured when he was younger. Oh my golly! John Stanley Gacy finally apologized to his son, and just when you thought hell had froze over, well, the damage was already done, and things are about to come crashing down on Mr. Gacy when he was involved with the Waterloo JCs and was deeply involved in drugs, as Harris from Harris and Me calls dirty pictures, prostitution, and wife swapping. Despite the dark underbelly, John was considered ambitious and a braggart. The JCs held him in high regard. Things seemed like they were looking up, and they were great for John Wayne Gacy, until he was found to have SA'd a 15-year-old boy. That boy was Donald Voorhees Jr., son of Donald Edwin Voorhees, a local politician. Gacy lured the teenager into his house with the promise of watching heterosexual stag films, which are 1800 to 1960 porno flicks that were regularly played at JC events. Gacy gave Donald a bunch of alcohol, allowed him to watch the aforementioned stag film, and persuaded Donald to engage in fellatio. He told Donald he had to have sex with a man before actually having sex with a woman. Voorhees didn't say anything to his dad for a long time until eventually breaking his silence in March of 1968. Donald Voorhees Sr. called the police, and police had Gacy arrested, and they charged him with oral sodomy. Another boy, 16-year-old Edward Lynch, was also assaulted by John. Gacy denied these accusations and demanded a polygraph test. The results of these tests were indicative of deception. Gacy publicly denied any wrongdoing and insisted the charges against him were politically motivated. Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gacy for nominations for appointment as president of the Iowa Jaycees, and several fellow Jaycees found Gacy's story credible and sided with him. However, in May 10, 1968, Gacy was indicted on the sodomy charge. On November 7, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to one count of sodomy related to what happened with young Donald Voorhees, but not guilty of the other assaults he committed against other male victims. He claimed Voorhees offered himself to Gacy and acted out of curiosity. His story was not believed, and he was convicted on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment at the Anamosa State Penitentiary. That same day, Mary Lynn wanted to divorce John, and who could blame her? Mary Lynn requested that she be awarded the house and property, sole custody of their 2 children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18, 1969. Gacy never saw Marilyn or his 2 kids ever again. During his incarceration, Gacy quickly acquired a reputation as being a model prisoner. That is surprising, but I suppose for a quote-unquote killer clown, John had some decent moments, but it still doesn't take away the horrific shit he does. During his time behind bars, he was a prison head cook. He joined the inmate chapter of the Jaycees, and he helped his fellow inmates in February of 1970. He had been denied parole. He couldn't even attend his dear old dad's funeral when his dad died on Christmas Day of 1969. Holy shit! A Christmas miracle that a lousy father like John Stanley Gacy kicks the bucket. I suppose an angel gets its wings after all, though the only people that were grieving are Mrs. Gacy, John's mom, and John Wayne himself. When he found out that his father had passed away, he was on the floor of that prison, devastated and in tears. Gacy moved back to Chicago in 1970. He was granted 12 months probation. Having served 18 months of his 10-year sentence, conditions of his probation include a nightly curfew and that Gacy had to live with his mom. At the time, not the most dignifying situation, but John had to deal with it. Better than nothing, I guess. On his release, Gacy told his friend, fellow JC member, Clarence Lane, no, not that Clarence, who picked him up from jail, and Clarence did think that John was innocent, that Gacy would never go back to jail, and he intended to reestablish himself in Waterloo. However, within 24 hours, Gacy relocated to Chicago, and he arrived there by bus on June 19th, and shortly after, got a job as a short-order cook. To loosely quote Britney Spears, oops, he did it again. Because on February 12th, 1971, Gacy caught another SA charge. The victim was another teenage boy who claimed Gacy lured him into his car at Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal and driven him home, where he had attempted to force the boy into doing it. The court dismissed the complaint when the kid failed to appear into court, and the clown escapes. I probably make reference to the Joker either escaping bats, Gotham City's incompetent law enforcement, or escaping from Arkham for the umpteenth time, but even Mr. J wouldn't find that funny. On June 22nd, Gacy was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct. In response to a complaint filed by a youth who claimed Gacy pretended to be law enforcement, lured the boy into his car to perform oral sex. These charges were dropped after it was revealed to be a blackmailing attempt from a spiteful, bratty kid. Gacy moved to a house with financial aid from his mom. The address was 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park Township, Illinois, part of the metropolitan Chicago. He lived in the ranch-style house until his arrest, and according to Gacy, he committed all of his murders there. In spite of all the evil John had committed in his life to his victims, Gacy played the role of a very helpful, kindly neighbor that loaned tools and plowed snow from the neighborhood sidewalks. By no means am I trying to paint John Wayne Gacy as a saint. Here, I'm sure he used these acts as means to blend in, as bad people and psychopaths tend to do. From 1974 to 1978, he hosted themed annual summer parties. These events were attended by up to 400 people, including politicians and business associates. In August of 1971, John met Carol Huff, whom he dated back in high school. They reunited. Carol and her 2 young daughters from a previous marriage moved into his house. They were married by July 1st, 1972. Gacy's mom moved out of the house shortly before John and Carol's wedding. By 1975, John told his wife that he was bisexual. After the couple made love on Mother's Day that year, he informed her that it would be the last time they would ever be intimate. He began spending most evenings away from home, only to return in the early mornings with the excuse that he had been working late or conducting business meetings. I hope Carol would suspect something is going on. Carol observed Gacy bringing home teenage boys into the garage in the early hours and also found men's wallets, gay porn, along with IDs of strange men inside of the house. When Carol tried to confront John about these findings, he angrily told her that it was none of her business. In October 1975, John and Carol's marriage was on the rocks. She asked him for a divorce after they had a heated argument. And on March 2nd, the Gacys divorced due to John's infidelity. In 1971, Gacy established a part-time construction business, PDM Contractors. PDM stands for Painting, Decorating, and Maintenance. With approval of his probation officer, Gacy worked evenings on his construction contracts while working as a cook during the day. Initially, he undertook minor repair work, but later expanded to include projects such as interior design, remodeling, and landscaping. In mid-1973, Gacy quit his job as a cook so he could work his construction job full-time. John was a member of his local Moose Club. During his membership of the Moose Club, Gacy became aware of the Jolly Joker Club. This is where Gacy becomes Pogo. Now, would Pogo go around killing people? No, that's John himself. I'm sure he nor other people that dress like clowns in the horror genre or are juggalos didn't help the reputation, which is culturophobia, the fear of clowns. People have fictionalized this aspect of Gacy's life, and I'm no different because of the illustration that I'm working on with Penelope battling a monster version of Gacy to protect Jake the squirrel, who is in a cage nearby. I realize Pogo and Gacy are one and the same, but at the same time, Gacy never dressed as Pogo to kill anybody. He seldom earned money from these performances, and later said his role of Pogo helped him regress into childhood. As evil as Gacy is, I could understand why, considering his childhood as being a horror show as it is. As Pogo, John visited and entertained hospitalized kids. Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, 26 of whom he buried in his crawl space of his house. John's hunting grounds were people he knew and randos picked up from the Chicago's Greyhound bus station, Bughouse Square, by promising the victim a job at PDM, an offer of drink and or drugs, or money for sex. Others were conned into believing Gacy, who often carried a sheriff's badge and had police lights on his Oldsmobile, was law enforcement. He lured a lone victim into his house, although on more than one occasion. Gacy had 2 victims, which he called doubles, 2 kills on the same evening. John had 28 victims that went to his home with him and never escaped, all of them ranging in ages between 15 to 20 years old. One of his victims cried for their parents that they would never be able to see them again. His, along with others, were discovered in that crawl space of Gacy's house. Gacy also mentioned having several rumored accomplices to investigators. John did eventually get caught due to an eventual confession to his crimes, and police digging up bodies from that crawl space, along with other graves on Gacy's property. Investigators discovered IDs of the victims, deviant sex books, and bones from victims. He was brought on trial on February 6, 1980, charged with 33 murders. He was tried in Cook County. Gacy had tried to use dissociative identity disorder as means to avoid the death penalty. To make a long court proceeding short, John Wayne Gacy was denied his appeals, and by May 4, 1994, he was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic with his family. His last meal, Gacy had ordered KFC, fries, strawberries, and a Diet Coke. They did say he did have a good taste in chicken. He was read his final rites from a priest and was executed via lethal injection. The illustration I was working on here involves a character sheet of John as a monster clown and a battle with my magical clown girl, Penelope. She is fighting John in order to rescue her boyfriend, Jake the squirrel, who is in a cage. He was kidnapped by the monster clown. Even though in real life, Gacy's targets were young men, this version did not like his meal to be taken off of him. Also, John did not kill people while dressed as a clown. Anyway, this video took me a while to put together. I'm sorry for not working on it. Life got in the way, and I have a job outside of YouTube. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please comment if you can, like and subscribe, and thanks again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this latest episode of True Crime Character Design. Bye!
It's caught in the crossfire.